Final award for this evening goes to a woman who has done as much as anyone to change the perception of documentary film in the last 35 years. She has shepherded over 1,000 documentary films into the world. We couldn't even create a reel for her because it would go on forever, and we'd probably leave out someone in the room who should have been in there. So instead, to get an idea of her influence, I'd like anyone in the room who's done a film with Sheila, could you please stand up for a second just to see? I think that tells it. To present this award, you can sit down now. She saw you. Award, we have a filmmaker who's just completed a new project for HBO called Rolling Stone: Stories from the Edge. His other films include Sinatra, All or Nothing at All, Going Clear, Mia Maxima Culpa, the Oscar-winning Taxi: The Dark Side, and many others. Please welcome Alex Gibney.
Thank you, Tom. Thanks for this wonderful event. I should point out that even before I started, Sheila already gave me a note. Keep it short. I should also point out as a point of record that there is a small typo in the program. It says Lifetime Achievement Award. That's incorrect. It's probably Career Achievement Award. Sheila has a lot more she's working on. In fact, you all have volume 1 of her 10-part autobiography series that's on your tables. And so if you catch her outside and get her to sign the book, you'll get a gift certificate for 2 through 10. As Sheila will tell you, if you ask, her success came from rejection. When she was at the Yale Drama School, she fell madly in love with a young man who broke her heart. He was a blue blood Protestant, and he broke up with her when he buckled to his mother's upper crust anti-Semitism. In pain, the devoutly ecumenical Sheila retreated to a Catholic place, the Benedictine Abbey of Regina Laudis in Connecticut. Yeah, it's a place that was later memorialized in a film Sheila produced called God is the Bigger Elvis, about another woman who retreated there and became a nun and an abbess after giving Elvis his first on-screen kiss. But it wasn't Sheila's path to become a nun. I got the biggest laugh from Sheila. Instead, like a priest with a snapped cookie of the Eucharist, Sheila turned her broken heart into something else. She swallowed her pain, and it fueled her ambition. Since that Ivy Leaguer let her go, Sheila has produced over 1,000 documentaries. Of those, 26 have won Academy Awards. She herself has won 32 Primetime Emmys, more than any other human, and 42 Peabody Awards. But that doesn't even begin to tell the story. Fact is that when she started, documentaries were worthy but mostly dull, like Spinach Without the Olive Oil or Garlic. And back in the day when I couldn't get work and was going out on job interviews, people who were trying on behalf of my wife, who was very nervous, to get me gigs, would say, "Tell them what you do if you must, but please try not to use the word documentary." If you don't believe me about what things were like, take a look at the title of the first doc Sheila produced in 1980. Consumer Reports Presents. Okay, that's not what we later came to expect from a Sheila Nevins film. Indeed, 1 year later, her next film was She's Nobody's Baby, followed by such things as G-String Divas. Over the years, she used the showmanship learned at the Yale Drama School to take the stories of ordinary people and turn them into extraordinary films. In a Rough Cut conference, you could talk philosophy with Sheila, but you better have a fucking plan to grab viewers in the first 2 minutes. And, you know, a number of people here, she was tough, and she had an enormous tolerance for material that was eye-grabbing, including, I believe, John Alpert will tell you, a shot of an eyeball, literally, he followed an eyeball dropping off of a face and followed it all the way across the room. What? Sorry. Corpse. A face is attached to a corpse, isn't it? Okay. Fact is, getting notes from Sheila is a movie in itself. And it is kind of a weird experience, fun but very unusual. Most of the time, in my experience anyway, you don't really talk about the movie at all. The conversation could move from Gentiles to genitals, from circular structures to circle jerks, Twizzlers to Tourette's, VJs to vaginas, face-off to faceless. Throughout the confab, she's joyously profane, deeply sacred, hard-headed, and soft-hearted. And you walk out of her uptown office thinking, now what the fuck did she say about my film? But you realize there was one note, one very important note that she mentioned almost in passing that was the heart of what was wrong and contained the path forward to making it work. In one case, I remember it was about how to render the voice of the deaf, which should have been a long conversation, but she got to the point of that one very quickly. And that's what you worked on. You came out of it with something to work on. And if you do get Sheila's notes by email, they are in free verse. Who does that? But the lines stick in your head, rough-cut poetry, and they guide you forward. So with her notes and her public presence throughout the years when most docs were dull, droning reports or celebrity profiles, Sheila was dragging me and other filmmakers kicking and screaming into making better and more exciting films and making everyone else watch them, until now, when audiences go to the docs first. And also, let's not forget, she managed to rise to the ranks of a channel and an industry dominated by men to become one of the world's most influential executives. In that role, she raised the money for us. She did all the ugly, ruthless stuff of promoting and marketing movies behind the scenes that we didn't have to. And she even reluctantly did a few celebrity profiles so she could keep her budgets up. But when I say she was a great executive, I'm not talking about the bullshit that most CEOs and big companies do. I'm talking about somebody who made a dent in the universe by showing everyone the power of stories about everyday people. Today, when you say the word documentary and people don't turn away, they lean in on the conversation, and we can all thank Sheila for that. But most important, Sheila made us all feel more deeply about the underserved, the spat upon, the poor, the dispossessed, the outcasts. She celebrated their humanity. She gave voice to the voiceless, comforted the afflicted, and afflicted the comfortable. She made even HBO, a faceless corporation, into a kind of empathy machine. So let's thank that foolish, careless wasp for breaking Sheila's heart. Like the priestess of the documentary that she is, she took the pieces of her heart and gave them, like communion, to the rest of us. Thank you, Sheila. Let's give it up for Sheila Nevins.
Okay, so I'm sick of docus. I've been doing them my whole life. Thank you. Is that harassment? Okay, I'll take it. I would have put a reel together, but then I would have taken credit for all your work, which I have done my whole life so far in this business. So I thought I'd try to do something a little different. I love you all. I love what I've done. I really think, if it's okay, Tom, where are you? If you could rename this award, I've given up my fucking life to docus. Would that be okay? I mean, you know, yeah, see, it's okay. I'm going to read you a very short story. I have a book which will cost you very little. As you leave, there will be someone, my son, my husband are here. How many of you have I tortured? Never mind how many have I worked with you. Tortured. John, hi! Have I tortured you too? Okay. I feel much better now. Okay, I'm going to read you the story in the book. I wrote a book. Why did I write a book? Because I was Sheila Nevins making docus, working on docus. And I thought, why? Okay, this is the book. It's free. It's on your desk. You can also buy the audio, and any contributions will be. If you think you don't make money in docus, you should try writing a book. It's called The Wrong Kind of Hot. Chock full of nuts was an old time, it only takes 4 minutes, and dinner will be served actually in about a half hour. So and the line for the ladies' room, you can use the WC upstairs, which is for both. Okay. Chock full of Nuts was an old-time coffee shop with great raisin cream cheese sandwiches and coffee that was always the right kind of hot. Hardly the place for a game changer, and yet it happened to be one. My mother was born with an awful disease called Raynaud's phenomena. Most of the time, Raynaud's simply means you have a lack of circulation in your extremities. Annoying, yes, but nothing to be alarmed about. But my mom had a severe case, the kind where your fingers, toes, and even your arms and legs would lose circulation and go from blue to black and then become gangrenous. It's incredibly painful if they turn black. They never heal and they never die, and the only treatment is amputation. So I grew up fearful of decay. A black nail would mean a finger above the knuckle was in danger and eventually would lead to an amputation. My mother's disease started ruthlessly with her fingers. First, it was the second finger on her left hand, and then over the years it progressed. Mount Sinai Hospital in New York was my second home. I knew all the nurses. I knew exactly how much change was needed in each vending machine. I wanted sweet things. Life was sour. Yet no Raisinets, no jujubes, no almond joy could take away the bitter taste of this life's brutal entrance fee. Mom, I would say, why do we live if we have to suffer? And my mom would say, what's the choice? And so it would be that I grew up sad and terrified, thinking every cold was terminal pneumonia, every small paper cut a future amputation. After all, I was my mother's daughter. My mother was hard on me, and I never seemed to do anything right. Pain disturbed any pleasure she might have had. Every event was fraught with the need for pain medication and my nursing skills. If I resisted this servitude, I would be blamed. She told me again and again that I was selfish. We didn't have money for help. My mother was sure angry living in hell, and I was her closest driver in this river Styx. Sure, I had a sister, but she was 7.5 years younger, so of course I was her caretaker. Sheila, do this, Sheila, do that. Sheila, you didn't do this. Sheila, you didn't do that. I loved my mother, but at the same time I resented her. While my friends' mothers shopped and worried about the color of their hair as it turned gray and their fire and ice matching lipstick and nail color, I lived in a private war-torn universe. I lived with this noose around my neck, and so I think I became me. My father was never home. He worked at the post office and booked bets for the mailman and spent his nights playing cards in what were then known as goulash joints on the Lower East Side of Manhattan. These were working-class, middle-class clubs where men would play poker for cash and bet on horses in sporting events, and they all smoked. My father smoked 3 packs a day. His nickname was Benny P.O. Hey, Benny, I want to bet on the Knicks game. What are the odds? What's the favorite? One day, when I was a sophomore living in a barn or dorm, commuting home frequently at my mother's beck and call, my mom came uptown for lunch. She was driving a newly equipped car with old handbrakes that could be maneuvered with her elbow. She was proud of its adaptability, and she zoomed citywide thanks to the Rusk Institute, the post office's medical plan, and Volvo Mechanics. By this time, she had suffered an amputation of her left arm just below her elbow. And as ugly as the amputation was, it was a great improvement over the creeping crud of gangrene and that excruciating pain of her dying limbs. In 1960, my mom was only in her early 40s, and this seemed so old to me. I was born when she was 22. She had come that day for lunch wanting to go to Chock full of Nuts to get one of their famous raisin cream cheese sandwiches and the always just right hot coffee. She seemed happy for once to see me, happy to be mobile and driving by herself, happy to be ambulatory, though amputated. It was a sultry, too warm day in May. Her pleated dress had long sleeves, the one on the right arm rolled up, and the one on the left tied in a knot below her stump. Now, there must be a better word for stump, but frankly, why euphemize the ugly? The air conditioning in the restaurant was off. It was tolerable, but my mom was hot with the knotted sleeve. This amputated arm had ghost-like sweat that would often roll down and wet the inside, as if the stump was crying and trapped without air. Mom said her arm was stifling. I rolled up her left sleeve, untying the knot. I unbuttoned the second button of her dress, and I fanned her with my study notepad. Any better, Mom? I asked. Not really, she said. Our sandwiches came in the perfect coffee, hot on a hot day, but perfectly so. Mom rested her stump on the counter. Her shortened arm was heavy, too heavy to lift and too short to hide below the counter. Suddenly, from the other side of the S-shaped counter, a middle-aged woman with a kinky perm bob and harlequin glasses who was fanning herself with a newspaper yelled out, "Please, ladies, I'm eating. It's rude to expose that arm. It makes me want to throw up." That's what she said. And that's what I remember she said. And every time we tell this story to close friends or sympathetic physical therapy folk, or just to each other, that's what my mom remembered too. I apologized to this bitch, which was odd for me. I wasn't the apologetic type. I was afraid to catch this woman's eye. I was afraid she would hurt me or make a bigger scene. Everybody in the restaurant listened. I rolled the sleeve down and retied the knot. I'm sorry, I said to this woman. I was embarrassed. Everything was going too fast. Customers started taking sides. The woman to our left said that the lady who spoke out was a crazy lady and she was disgusting. And yet a man on the right said, after all, this is a place, ladies, where you eat, and some things are not meant to be seen while you're eating. The two squabbled, these strangers. Mom and I hurriedly left the restaurant. The sandwiches were never going to be tasty again. The coffee was never going to be the right kind of hot. Everything was cold. I cried in the fixed-up car. My mom said the woman was nasty, maybe a little crazy too, but I cried. I cried because I had not yelled back. I should have said, fuck you. This is my mom. She has a horrible, horrible disease that you are lucky enough not to have. I was furious that I had apologized. Why had I? Why was I ashamed? Why was I a beggar and not a victor? Why had I let this woman seize this moment? Why? People talk of moments that make you change, that determine who you are. This moment was mine. I would realize that I understood people and their suffering, and somewhere in defending their difference, there would be a place for me. I had failed that once, and I would not fail again. So I would grow to champion stories about those less fortunate, stories of real people. Mostly, I chose to tell stories of the struggle to triumph in an uncertain and so very often cruel world. I've always been interested in those who need visibility, notoriety, and acceptance, anonymous victims of unfairness, deprivation, and poverty. I guess I was determined to write my ineffectiveness at that lunch counter so very long ago. Documentaries talk back while I had been unable. They speak without shyness and no apologizing, blatant truth, ugly at times, yet always true. So, 2 leftover cups of coffee and raisin bread with cream cheese had lost their taste forever. Chock full of nuts, the wrong kind of hot. Thank you all very much.